There's a study done in the Washington Post, and it said that, about 2013, and it said that only 13% of workers are, leap out of bed and are happy to go to work and, fully engaged and all that kind of stuff. In Australia, we have the Australian Psychological Society, and they did a 5-year study, and they came up with 87% of workers are depressed, right? And this is a combination, mild, medium, severely depressed. So everyone's depressed at some level. The other thing is 49% of those workers said, we don't think our employer cares about our mental health or our well-being. And then those same 49% said, we actually don't think the employer cares about or values our contribution. Okay, so that's happening there. Externally, the biggest issue affecting employees is personal finances. So, if they've got the mortgage and the credit cards and stuff like that, it's kind of like a really big thing. So if they're depressed at work and they're concerned about their finances, they're obviously fearful of losing their job, whether there's going to be redundancies or takeovers or mergers or stuff like that, or they don't pass their performance review, that kind of thing. So there's all those kind of things. And then in the workplace, you might have bullying and harassment and communication issues. Because if you're a manager, people assume that you actually have communication skills, and this is kind of not really necessarily so. I read recently about someone was saying, oh, look, only 60% of workers are actually engaged. And I went, wow, that is kind of nuts, because that is actually a chemical thing. People aren't engaged because they're stressed. Yeah? As soon as people go into stress, they go into this chemical reaction so that their brain is flooded with chemicals, cortisol, and they get really fuzzy. So how can you be engaged when you've got an external pressure of your personal finances, you're feeling depressed, you don't think you're valued, and so on? So in answer to that question is, in effect, because people bring their emotional stuff to work, no, the employer is not responsible. However, if you wanted to be a leader in your field and do the right thing and say, yes, we are valuing and contributing to the mental health of our workers, you would instigate stress resolution techniques, obviously, because your productivity is going to go up, your efficiency is going to go up, and your bottom line obviously is going to increase as well. So if you've got happy workers, then they can actually contribute more meaningfully to your organisation. So it's kind of like no and yes, I strongly feel that it would benefit both parties for the employer to instigate stress resolution techniques for them, because everyone will kind of be more positive, lifted above that negative line, and once you lift it above that, you can pretty much achieve what you need to achieve. So really what happened was I'd done all this research and studied all this stuff and put everything together and said, okay, how we respond to stress is a habit. Let's look at the stress response mechanism. If we can resolve that, that will work. So there were two secrets to what I came up with, and it was like repair the physiology. And I'll talk about that shortly. And the other one was increase your energy, because if you don't have the energy, which is the oomph plus the vibration, if you can, increase your vibration, that will increase what how you attract things into your life. And the key to unraveling or opening those two issues is that you had to get to the underlying cause. And I recognised that there were two underlying causes of stress, and one was how you respond to stress. If we can resolve that, because the breath, if you don't have breath, you don't have life. So if you get to that issue and you can resolve that and gain control of that, that's the key. The other one was your underlying beliefs. So I don't deal with the underlying beliefs initially. I do that in step 2. So what will happen with this methodology is when you actually start to breathe properly, what happens is your breathing apparatus relaxes. You retrain your autonomic nervous system, which runs right down here, and it relaxes and it stretches out. And when somebody says something to you, how you respond is it's as though time has slowed down and you've gained more time, because you're not scrunched. If you're scrunched up like this, you're going to react really quickly, like that, you know? But if you're relaxed and everything's like that, if somebody says something to you, you will stand back and say, wow, I used to respond like this, I don't have to respond. So you have a choice. So this is about having a choice. So you gain control over your breathing and your stress response mechanism. That leads to choice, and that leads to freedom. So if you got that, it's about as good as it gets. So that was the key for me. You know, when I unraveled all that and I went, wow, you know, I can help everybody, and this affects everybody. Like if we changed how we're doing this, it will resolve everything. So that was the key for me. So that was what I was looking at. I had to get to the underlying issues. So what will happen sometimes is when people stand back and say, when so-and-so says something to me, this is how I respond, and you'll actually start to think about what was driving that thought, which is actually that belief that you've carried forward. So when you start to understand the beliefs that are driving you, then you'll be able to resolve that separately. But we don't do that first. Let's just do one thing at a time. We just want to do one thing really well, you know, not 57 different techniques, you know, just one. When you're trying to create a new habit, it takes about 31 days to actually reset a new habit. But what that means is you don't actually get rid of anything because it's all locked in, you know. So what you have to do is create new neural pathways. So you're building a habit over what you did before. So that becomes your new default position. So you choose a new way. So rather than go into fear, doubt, judgment, guilt, whatever it is, stress, you go into positive. So you're easily able to choose positive. So we're retraining you in a positive way. So what happens with this is when we're doing the heart rate variability with that software that I mentioned earlier, what we're doing is we're actually mending the heart, because this is the new brain. The heart is new brain. It actually is emitting about 60,000 more signals, electrical signals, than the head brain. So what that means is when we can get this under control and mend the heart through the emotions, the brain waves smooth out instead of being going zzz, really erratic. So when this smooths out, the brain waves up here in the head smooth out, and that means you'll gain more focus, more clarity.